You're listening to Little Rockers Radio.
Little Rockers Radio is a proud partner of COPE, the Centre of Perinatal Excellence, and we hope to help COPE as much as we can in supporting the emotional and mental health challenges that can be experienced during pregnancy and in the first year following birth. With Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Awareness Week coming up in November, I wanted to talk to Nicole Hyatt, who is the COPE founder and executive director, to find out more. Hi Nicole, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Hi, Sarah.
Can you tell us a little bit about COPE and the amazing work that you do?
Yes, so COPE is Australia's peak body in pre- and postnatal emotional and mental health. So this is a time in a woman's life, the time of having a baby, when we know women are most likely to develop mental health problems. It is a time of significant change and adjustment. There's lots of expectations and stresses that come with becoming a mother or a father. So as a result, we've developed COPE to really guide and support people in the side around emotional and mental health, and really making sure people are equipped with knowledge and information and the latest evidence to support them throughout that journey.
And it's not uncommon, is it? How prevalent is perinatal anxiety and depression?
So look, we all have times when we might feel sad or down or find ourselves getting a bit anxious from time to time, if we've got a lot of stress on or things coming up. And that's absolutely normal. That is normal stress. But there's times in life when that stress goes further and actually becomes what we call distress. And distress is when we don't have the resources to keep managing that stress that's coming upon us. And this can lead to the development of conditions like anxiety and depression. So we know from our research in Australia that up to 1 in 5 women will experience anxiety during pregnancy and also in the first year after having a baby. And depression affects up to 1 in 10 women in pregnancy and then increases to affect 1 in 7 in the first year after having a baby. So these are very common conditions. If you think about the people you know who might be pregnant or the mothers in your mother's groups, that's 1 in 5 or 1 in 7 who are likely to be affected by these conditions. And of course, these conditions also occur together in a lot of cases. Around half the women experiencing this condition experience both anxiety and depression at the same time, which is very, very debilitating.
And there is a real fear or dare I say shame when you're a new mother and you are going through feelings of distress. And I think that for many reasons we don't seek help soon enough when we are feeling this way. So as a mother who's in the thick of it, or as a friend or a family member who's watching and really wanting to support, first of all, what are the signs and what can we do to help?
So the most important thing, I think, is to be aware of if you do have friends or family who are babies, or yourself within your own networks of people with other small children. Just being aware that these conditions are very common is the first thing, and being aware that this is a very challenging time of life in lots of areas, like your changes to your relationships, your demands about your work, both your workplace and at home. There's lots and lots of different changes, and it's these changes and adjustments which do increase the likelihood of these conditions occurring. It's also true that quite often the signs and symptoms of anxiety and depression are put down to just being part of having a baby. So, for example, in pregnancy, symptoms of anxiety might manifest like having a racing heart, feeling sort of on edge a lot of the time. These are classic symptoms of anxiety, but quite often people think, well, this must be hormones. So the signs are not recognised or the conditions are not considered because they're putting this down to hormones in pregnancy. And similarly, anxiety in the postnatal period or depression, feeling sad or down, finding it difficult to cope from day to day and achieve things, small things, being able to sleep well, and think, well, this is just part of having a baby. So again, these early signs and symptoms are not identified early and treatment is not sought early. And in fact, we've done an online survey with over 2,000 mums who've had anxiety or depression at this time of life, and 74% of women said they did not seek help until they reached breaking point. They didn't get help until they reached the point that they couldn't cope any longer. And there's lots of reasons for that, not only misrepresenting or misinterpreting the signs, but also there's a lot of high expectations that come with having a baby.
Yeah.
When you think about it, there's probably no other time in life where you have no reference point. You've never done this before. So where do you get your ideas from about what motherhood is going to be like? Well, you're looking at all the beautiful ads on TV, and you're looking at all the beautiful advertising surrounded by, and that is starting to impact on your perceptions about what motherhood is going to be like. So when that doesn't reflect what your experience actually is, women are often feeling like they're failing or they're not being good mothers, and they're reluctant to talk about it with other people for fear of how they might be viewed or judged themselves or by other people. So quite often people are struggling and not getting the help and support that they need because they feel like they need to keep up a good front and be shown to be coping because that would be seen as a weakness or potentially being judged as not being a good or competent.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the figures that you mentioned of 1 in 7 or 1 in 10 that are suffering, it's not uncommon that the groups that you're in, there are also others in that same situation. So your mother's group or your friendship groups of other mums who have recently had babies, it's quite likely that they would be in the same situation, I assume, but are not speaking up.
That's right. And because no one's talking about it openly and honestly, you're left feeling like you're the only one that is going through this.
Yeah.
And we've found from, discussions where we try and really promote to have the conversation, be aware of these conditions, opening up allows other people the permission to realise that it's not just me, and everyone can work together to support each other because there's always good and bad days about being a mum or a dad. And we don't need to project what the TV ads are saying, that it's perfect all the time. It's never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in this area. And we just need to be more realistic and more open and honest about, but be aware as well of our expectations and whether we're setting ourselves up for failure by having unrealistic expectations of motherhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always, if I'm ever asked for advice for someone who's about to have a baby or has got a new baby, my advice is always the same, just to completely lower your expectations.
Absolutely, Sarah. And look, this is one of the reasons that we've developed a new guide called the Ready to Cope Guide. Now, this is a free fortnightly email guide that women can sign up to at any stage during their pregnancy or in the first year after having their baby. And the Ready to Cope Guide will provide them with all these insights and strategies and things that they wish they knew more about that's relevant at the time. And so, this is a great resource that I'd really encourage your listeners to be informed and equipped and empowered with information by signing up to the Ready to Cope guide at readytocope.org.au.
Okay, so Ready to Cope, all of the links for the Ready to Cope guide are also on our website at littlerockersradio.com.au. Now, just quickly, last week we interviewed Tamara, who is a mother jumper. She's jumping out of a plane to support Cope. Can you tell us a little bit about this thrill-seeking fundraiser that you're running?
Yes, absolutely. So Mother Jumpers is our annual fundraising event. This was really given to us generously by Ali Price, who had been running this for a long time and choosing various donors, and Cope was the donor recipient last year. And we had a great turnout of women. And what we found is women who had been through the experience of motherhood or just jumping in honour of someone else. Yep. It was a way to really themselves and experience the thrill of jumping out of an aeroplane. But importantly, it's also around raising awareness as people. The way that this works is that you create your own MyPause page and then your friends and family sponsor you as part of your jump. So it's a great way to raise the awareness and the conversation and get that support and build that support network around you. And then after the cost of the jump is paid from your fundraising efforts, the rest of the money goes towards Cope. That's enabled us, for example, to develop the Ready to Cope guide and precious resources for women and families so they have access to that information. But we really love people. This is on the 10th and 11th of November, so it goes over a weekend to launch the beginning of P&D week. And, it's a great opportunity to get involved and get out there and jump for a great cause.
So anyone who's listening who wants to jump out of an aeroplane, they can visit cope.org.au and sign up to be a mother jumper. Or if you're wanting to support other mother jumpers, you can also hop onto the Cope website. For anyone who's listening who is interested in the Ready to Cope guide, it is at readytocope.org.au. And as I said, all of the links are also on our website at littlerockersradio.com.au. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole.
Thanks again so much, Sarah.
That was Nicole from cope.org.au on Little Rockers Radio. Thanks very much for listening.